This is the World Organic News for the week ending 14th of May 2018. John Moore reporting. Decarbonise the air and recarbonise the soil. We begin this week with a post from the blog SPWD blog, entitled Earthworm Gut May Offer New Ways of Efficient Recycling of Organic Waste. Quote, earthworms are considered best friends of farmers, acting as engineers in soil. They are helpful in decomposition of waste, producing biofertilisers. Indian scientists have investigated the gut of earthworms to get an insight into why they are so efficient in helping decomposition. They found that the gut of earthworm provides an ideal environment for nurturing of a variety of cellulose-degrading bacteria, because of which they are able to convert organic waste from plant sources into fertiliser or compost. End quote. Earthworms are the most visible sign of soil biota. They are tremendously important for more reasons than you might imagine. Apart from all the good work they do in the soil, they are, in some senses, the canaries in the coal mine, that is your soil. If your earthworms are dying, so too is your other soil biota. Now, there are natural causes of these die-offs: too much rain, sodden, air-free soil, that sort of thing. But more importantly, there are other causes which we can do things about, artificial fertilisers being the most obvious. Earthworms can survive some level of these, but over time the other effects of artificial fertiliser leads to a need for more of these to maintain fertility, and increasing levels of fertilisers leads to the conditions which kill off first earthworms, but all the other soil biota too. On an up note, these fertilisers are water soluble and wash out of the soil quickly. Then the use of liquid fertilisers seems to encourage helpful critters in this blank environment. By liquid fertilisers I mean things like compost teas, manure teas and the like. These not only bring back to your soil earthworms, they appear to feed other soil biota too. So the two parts, the visible and the invisible, benefit from these liquid fertilisers. The other point from the post is that the two types of earthworms they tested, surface living and deeper living semi-aquatic species, show that the deeper living produce more soil carbon than the surface species. Quote, further analysis has revealed that the growth rate of cellulose-degrading bacteria in semi-aquatic freshwater earthworms was much faster than composting earthworms, thus making them more efficient decomposers of rice straw. End quote. This means that to encourage them and support them, we need to avoid deep soil disruption, that is, ploughing and or digging. The mechanism of soil carbon creation is a complicated matter. It varies with weather conditions, soil pH and so on. At the very least, we now know the importance of earthworms who live in the deeper parts of the soil, possibly in the areas where the water table varies, hence the semi-aquatic nature of the studied species. But these need spaces where there is no water but a moist soil, for if the choices are between wet and dry, they too will perish. So to support these species we need stable soil structures which allow excess water to drain and space above the water table for them to migrate to and from. These just happen to be the ideal conditions for the mycelia which connect the roots of plants together and act as a buffer system to store sugars and starches when they are produced in excess by above ground plant life, in particular trees, but all plants in an ecosystem. In summary of this post, science is recording the facts that earthworms convert cellulose to soil carbon through their gut bacteria, and it appears the deeper living species do this more efficiently than the species living near the surface. I mentioned compost teas before, and in a post from Simply Gardening, we have a post entitled Compost Tea, a Healthy Beverage for Your Plants. Quote, it's easy to make compost tea. Simply place a good shovel full of fresh compost in a 5-gallon bucket or other waterproof container. Then fill the container with water. Allow this mixture to steep for about a week, stirring it daily to get a good brew. End quote. Now, compost tea making is a very inexact science. The makeup of your compost will determine the efficacy of the tea made from it. The happy outcome is that no matter what compost you use, the tea will benefit the soil to some extent, so give it a go. From later in that same post, quote, to use the compost tea, simply strain the mixture to separate the liquid from the solid compost. Make sure the liquid is cool to the touch, as it may be warm if it's been brewing in the sunlight. Put the cool compost tea in a watering can and water your plants as normal. It's that simple. End quote. As a general rule, I break down the tea on a 1 part tea to 4 parts water basis. I know the post suggested using it straight, but I found that this was just a little too, in air quotes, hot, especially for seedlings where I was starting to get a sort of leaf burn. As ever, I would advocate you run your own trials to see what happens where you live. Manure tea is made and used in the same way, but it definitely has to be broken down 1 parts to 4 because it is hot. Way back on the 12th of January 2017, there's a post from Dank47 entitled Brewing Compost Tea. This can equally be applied to manure tea. There's a link in the show notes, and coincidentally in the show notes for episode 47, as it turns out. And with that, I'll draw this episode to a conclusion. Remember, decarbonise the air and recarbonise the soil. Now, as a podcast listener, you may be thinking about producing your own podcast, but you're not sure where to begin. Drop over to mrjohnmoore.com, link in the show notes, and check out the free checklists I've got there to get you started. I've been teaching people how to podcast at community courses around Sydney in the last 12 months and have developed an online version of the course. The checklists will get you started, and there's access to the courses at the same website. Classes start whenever you're ready, and I'd love to help you into this wonderful medium. A transcript of this episode is available at worldorganicnews.com. Thanks for listening. I'll be back next week.